Hello, and welcome to the Exceptional Children Summer Institute of 2023. We are here today to talk about sketch notes, and we're talking about how do we make our verbal very visual for our students and taking that to even remembering. What were my thoughts during the lecture? How was I processing this? Those are the things that sketch notes help our students with. And every day when we're thinking about how do I get my kids to be engaged and active, sketch notes can help us. So this is not the only video out there for sketch notes. Please take time to watch some others. There's some great ones on YouTube. But think about how you can use sketch notes in your classroom and how can I get my kids actively engaged and into the visual process. So why do we use sketch notes? Let's talk about that. Well, for one, it's going to improve my memory about what you were talking about in the classroom at the time. It's also going to give us a chance to have some recall about the situation that is going on and allowing me to bring back what was being said to you. So if I call on a student and they've been doing some sketch notes and I say, what's a couple of the last things that we've talked about? They have something to go by, not just from their memory at that moment. Another thing is it improves our comprehension. We know the students who are actively engaged in the classroom remember more things. And as I'm writing things, it makes it easier for me to really think through the process of what's going on. Another thing that it does for us is that it keeps our students engaged in what's going on in the classroom. They're active at that point, using the sketch notes to take on the information and process it. It makes students happy. Sketch notes is not art, okay? But kids can be very proud of all the things that they remember and all the things that they've taken down. And sometimes it does become a little bit of an art thing for our students. But another thing is it organizes their thinking. One of the things we know about special needs kids is they have trouble with organization. They also have trouble with remembering and recalling things, and this gives them that opportunity. In mathematics, we talk about the concrete, the semi-concrete, and the abstract. And we know that the semi-concrete, where they're drawing it out, actually is the part that puts it into the brain. And so we really want our kids to have that opportunity in every lesson that we do to really put that into the brain. So yes, I may have had some manipulatives that I've used and I can remember some of it, but then when I draw out what's happening or I draw out what I'm thinking, that's where it really starts to put it into the brain. And we remember and comprehend and understand and able to recall that better than ever before. So those kind of things for our students is very important. So what's one of the big rules about sketch notes is it's not art, okay? It is not art. We are connecting information and ideas. We're taking what we hear and what we're listening to, and we are making it very visual for ourselves. So this gives us a chance to actually to create the visual of our thinking. Now, the more you doodle, the better your students remember. They get to start taking notes, and they're taking notes in a sense of, I'm not having to take all the information down. Many times our students don't know what they need to filter out. So by doodling and by putting just the big things down and showing them how to doodle, take your own thinking and start to doodle on a page for them to create the sketch notes. It's huge for our students. The other thing is with sketch notes, we can color code, right? And we're getting that information down. This can be done in a notebook. It can be done on a Post-it note. It can be done on your iPad. It can be done in a slide deck. However that student may need, it can be modified for them. We can accommodate that student in different ways through sketchnoting. But like I said, the biggest rule is it's not art. Okay. The other thing I want you to remember is that for those students is putting their thinking on a page. So how do we get them very actively listening to the things that are going on, along with putting that information that they may need onto a page? So as we're doing this, we want to make sure that they understand what they need to be doing each day, and that when they're sketchnoting, that I'm listening for information. So we are making them more active listeners. Now, when can I do a sketch note? I can do sketch notes when I'm brainstorming. I can use sketch notes for quotes that I need to remember. I can use sketch notes during my lessons. I can have my students to have pictures that they're starting with, and then they sketch note around it. I can do this during a practice test retrieval. All of these things is when I can do sketch notes. Sketch notes can be used at any point in time. So I'm going to go back and really quickly describe a practice test retrieval. And in a practice test retrieval, this is a Paul Riccomini strategy. It's based on the information of Anita Archer, in that I need to retrieve information. I need to pull it from the back of my head, and I'm going to bring it forward. And this is a great thing to do for our kids, to know what they remember. And it's graded by the student, and they add information to it. So I love that part of it. So a practice test retrieval is, I'm going to give my students just a couple of minutes. I'm going to maybe give them a term or a situation or a strategy that I've talked about. And I'm going to say, now, tell me everything you can remember about that. And so they will, at that point, just start drawing on their paper or writing out bulleted list, however. But if you give them the chance to do a sketch note, then they have the opportunity to write it wherever on the page that they may need to remember it. Now, if they've done a sketch note prior to, they may remember where they put information at about that topic if they were looking for vocabulary or whatever. So this gives them that opportunity to think about things they've done before. But a PTR gets all that information, all the good stuff that they can remember about that topic now. Now, once they're finished and they've done this PTR, one of the things that you want to do is put up all of the information you wanted to make sure was on that page. Give them a different pencil or a different colored marker, whatever it may be that they need, but it needs to be a different color. Anything that they have on their list, leave it alone, right? So making sure that they leave that information, as long as it's correct, on their list. Now, they're going to add in the different color anything that's missing from your list. That is important for our students to be able to do. So this gives them a chance to know, oh, anything that was written in blue and not in my pencil, I need to make sure I study. Or I didn't remember that. Now I've got to put it back in there. Is there something I need to talk to my teacher about that's on this list that I may not have known already? Or I didn't remember. Maybe that's something I need to ask in small group tomorrow. This gives them that opportunity. Now, how do I get started with a sketch note? First of all, give your students opportunity to choose materials, but make it simple at first. Tell them to use boxes. Tell them to use circles, things that they can easily draw. Now, if they can't draw those, I suggest providing them with the opportunity to be able to trace them, or give them an already created sheet that you want them to kind of start to fill out. And then they get the understanding of it. And then, oh, you're sketching around that. The other thing is, get the students to be active participants in the class. Listen for finding terms and phrases to place on your sketch notes. So we're just getting it started. And I would model this. I would really model this for my students so that they understand. Big ideas need to be there. Talk to them about what were those big ideas that you needed to really be listening to. Show them how to draw arrows to change the events that's happening, or what's the next thing in sequence that I need to remember. Stars can be used for things that I really want to highlight. And then the other thing is that we need to think about is like ribbons and different shapes that they can use to hold information inside of. Sometimes just a square or a circle or a heart, because this is something I really need to remember, I put it in a heart. Or if something I really loved about the lesson, I put it in a heart. Give them time to color code it. right? Give them time to either highlight or to shade in or to color over some information that they feel is very important, or a specific color stands out for that. Model on your board, making sure you're modeling on your whiteboard different ways to do this and how you could highlight and how you can make things stand out. And then spotlight your sketch notes, because these are important for our students to see. Hey, look how so-and-so put his notes together. And this gives them a chance to see how being an active listener and putting this information together or organizing that information from each other, because I may not understand how to organize all of my information. I'm just putting it down. I've created some today, and I'm going to say it's probably not the best way that I have created them, but I did them I did them with the way I was thinking at the time, kind of doing a PTR for myself. So we're going to look at a couple, but there are many out there. And again, please Google it. Google sketch notes. Look what's out there for different subjects, because there's so many great ones, and many of them are truly color coded in many different ways. And I love the fact that they've taken the time to go back and color code and put it in. And if you're doing it, of course, on either a slide deck, or maybe you're doing it in Word, or you're doing it in Google in some way, Google Drawings, whatever, or even on a whiteboard where you've got opportunities to just click and change the colors. Those kind of things can help. But again, I want my students, as much as I can, to have that paper pencil experience, because just that movement that you're really getting with your hand sometimes, and the pressure that you're feeling, puts a lot into the brain. And we know that. Again, like I said, spotlight your student sketch notes, because it gives us the opportunity to say, hey, look at this. Look how this was organized. I love the fact that they remembered this. And it gives you a chance to kind of review your lesson. So here's an example of one of the sketch notes that we have. And this one is about the skin. And unfortunately, some of it did not come through when we were doing, when we scanned it in. But gives us a thing to understand what the skin is, that when I was thinking and I was working through it and those kind of things as I'm listening to the teacher talk. And so these are all the things that was in the lesson that I found was important. Now, as a teacher, if I'm doing one as we're going through and I'm lecturing and I'm talking and I'm putting things down, mine may look a little different, and my kids can add to it if they need to. Kind of like bringing back that retrieval of, oh, I heard that, but I didn't get it on my notes, so maybe I need to add it in. You can do things like that, and then they can add it in to where they feel is appropriate on their thing. Here's another one. This is Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Just some information about it and things that they had. And so as I'm going through and I'm thinking about who's the characters that I've been reading about, what's some of the people that were in there, what was the names of those, what was it about, what was important during that, where did he start, where does it end, what's something that may have stood out, all the things that we can have for a story. Now, it doesn't have to be this elaborate. Maybe it's just a couple of things that we really want them to pay attention to. Alexander, who used to be rich last Sunday. This one is a great way for my students to get sequencing of events. And maybe this is just one way that that student could do that. And when we're thinking about what did he do? How did he lose the money? Those kind of things, and how much money did he have left? As we're walking through, they're thinking and going through the story, and not only are they doing just the reading and getting the sequencing of events, they're doing some math as they're doing it. Love the story for those purposes. And talking to our students about saving money and what happens when we don't save money and how we don't have the money at the end. Those kind of things are important. And did he really need certain things? So we talk about what's a need and what's a want. And in his case, a lot of these are all wants. So in this story, I just wanted at this point for them to talk about the sequencing of events, thinking about how much money he spent, where did the money go to, and this could be one way that he's got started. So take some time right now to think about practicing one. You can stop, think about something you're getting ready to teach, and practice everything you would want those students to remember on a sketch note. So just pause the video and practice. Here is a PTR, which is a practice test retrieval on fractions that we could do with a third grade group. And we could talk about what do they need to remember. And so what have I processed? And then the teacher would place this up and they would put it on there. Concerns that you may have. Now I'm going to say this now. Concerns that you may have is, have they seen the image before that you want them to be able to do, especially if they're doing visual vocabulary? Can they draw and model? So you need to draw and model with them. Remember, it's not art. It's about the content that they're putting on the page. And make sure that the students are actively listening. And then modifications you can do is you can share a doc and you can pull in icons and those kind of things to where they can pull pictures over if they're using it. Also think about having a partial guided notes already created to where they're filling in around it. And they're drawing in some information. Have it digitally if they need it, or even color code so that they have that opportunity. So one of the things that I think is important for our students to be able to have is for them to have something to go by. So if my students are struggling, I maybe give them this. And so I have one of these already created for my students, as you can see, and I would have them just to lay it underneath. And so maybe I need something to get started and I want, I'll just give them a minute and say, okay, let's put our topic there. And so if they're sitting there just real quickly, they can pull this over and they're like, okay, I'm gonna put my topic right in the center so that I know, and it's not going to be perfect. Again, like I said, this is not art. They can fill in a little later if they need to. And so they just take the time as you're talking about it, and they're just going ahead and fill in. I was able to trace that very quickly, and now I can add in, as you can see, it's right there. Now I can add in my topic that I'm going to be discussing. So today we're going to talk about ratios. And so I'm going to write ratio right there in the center, and maybe I go into the definition of a ratio. And so the student's like, oh, okay, I need to remember what a ratio is. I can just draw a square underneath if I wanted to, or, oh, I know this is important. I need to put a star on my square as I'm doing it because, oh, wow, vocabulary is so important. And so the student puts a big star there. They'll highlight it. Maybe that's in bright yellow when they're doing it so that they have that opportunity. And so it's right there for them to be able to see. And then they put their definition as you're talking about the definition to the students. And so then as you're giving some examples, maybe they put some examples, you've put some notes out for them to see on your own examples, and they may be filling that in as they're doing it just to get started. Now later on, you may not have to provide them with this because they kind of know by the time they've used this a couple of times. I can draw a heart around this. I want them, oh, that's a quote. I better make sure I've got that there. And I heard my teacher say, ratios are not just fractions. And so we get into that and they put that down there, and maybe they put it in really big words. They're not just fractions. And so those are some ways that we can do sketch notes, just quick and easy. Like I said, the student will be doodling, and we can go back in our thing as we were seeing here earlier, that some of the rules for sketch notes, and this student is working away here, and we're seeing them working, and they're, oh, we're going to talk about line graphs today. What are those line graphs? And as they're doing it, they're filling it in. And then, now what's this? And then getting them to understand what those are. And they're just filling in as they're doing it. So we want them to have that opportunity to be able to see some other things that they may remember about it. Again, it can be done anywhere, right? I can use it in my notebooks if I've got maybe a notebook that I'm keeping for class. If my students, if we want to, we can put them together. We can do some Post-it notes. It can be done on an iPad, and they can keep the image in a slide deck. Wherever you may want to do your sketch notes, they can sketch note. They're just filling in that information of what they're hearing. They're making it very visual for themselves. One of the things that I did as a student, especially in history class, and I wanted to remember things, I was really caught up on Beetle Bailey cartoons. So I would draw Beetle Bailey, and I would actually, make one of the little things, little thought bubbles or whatever, And I would have those, and I would put important dates in there so I would remember it. And some of the times when I was going back and I was thinking about, oh my, I know I remember that. I wrote it down. Oh, that was the time. Okay. And I would remember a date because of what I had drawn around it. And so that helped me a lot. Again, color coding things helps our students. So letting them color code some of the things on their sketch notes, sharing their sketch notes with a partner, giving them that opportunity to have just a minute or two to say, hey, you've been sketch noting or you've been taking notes this entire time. Now I want you to share with your partner all your information that you have. And so giving them a minute, partner A shares, and then partner B says, oh yeah, I had everything on your list, but I also had this. Did you remember that? Giving them that chance to be able to do those kind of things gets them remembering, and they're active listeners in class because it's important what I have visually remembered. So this gives us also that, like I said, that part of that semi-concrete that we talk about in mathematics all the time of where we're drawing. And I want them to be able to do that. I hope you have enjoyed our wonderful video today. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful school year, and hope to catch you later.